The tiger first came to the village gate at sunrise, when the mist still clung to the rice fields and the morning smoke from cooking fires hung low over the road. At first, no one believed what they were seeing. A milkman dropped his bicycle in the dirt. Two women carrying brass water pots froze in the lane. A cluster of children on their way to school began screaming all at once. Even the pariah dogs that usually barked at everything tucked their tails and vanished under carts. The tigress stood in front of the iron gate of the Bhairavpur Health Clinic as if she belonged there. She was enormous up close, far larger than the striped shadows that sometimes slipped along the forest edge at dusk. Her coat, even dulled by mud and dust, glowed orange beneath the pale morning light. Black stripes curved over her shoulders and flanks like ink painted on muscle. One side of her face was scratched, and her right foreleg dragged slightly when she shifted her weight. Her breathing was heavy. Her amber eyes were bright with pain and something more unsettling than pain: focus. Inside the clinic courtyard, Dr. Meera Shah had just unlocked the dispensary door. She had been serving in Bhairavpur for 8 years, long enough to know the rhythms of the village and the forest beyond it. The village sat at the edge of a buffer zone near the Mahadev Tiger Reserve, where sugarcane fields and grazing land pressed against sal forest and dry riverbeds. Leopards were seen from time to time. Sloth bears caused trouble in mango season. Wild boars raided crops almost nightly. Tigers were known in the reserve, of course, but they usually stayed where they belonged, and the villagers preferred it that way. At 39, Meera had the calm, practical face of a doctor who had delivered babies during monsoon floods, stitched machete wounds by lantern light, treated snake bites, fevers, fractures, and grief in equal measure. She was not a woman easily frightened by noise. But when her compounder, 19-year-old Pooja, burst through the side door crying, "Doctor, tiger, tiger at the gate!" Meera thought for a moment the girl had lost her senses. Then she stepped into the courtyard and saw the animal herself. For one suspended second, everything stopped. The tigress stood on the other side of the gate, not snarling, not charging, simply staring through the bars toward the clinic building. Her chest rose and fell. A line of dried blood marked her shoulder. One ear was torn. Her paw rested awkwardly on the packed dirt as if putting weight on it hurt. "Back inside," Meera said quietly. Pooja obeyed at once. 3 patients who had come early, a pregnant woman, an old farmer with a cough, and a boy with a swollen ankle, huddled against the far wall of the veranda. Outside the gate, villagers were gathering at a nervous distance, their shouts rising in confusion. "Call the forest office," Meera told Pooja. "Now." Pooja's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the clinic phone. The tigress took one slow step closer to the gate. Meera did not move. She had seen fear before in animals: cornered dogs, cows in labor, goats with legs caught in fencing. This was not quite fear. The tigress's gaze moved from the veranda to the clinic door, then briefly to the road behind her, then back again, as if she were waiting. By the time the forest department jeep arrived, half the village was standing behind mud walls, peering around trees and rooftops. Ranger Arvind Rana jumped out with 2 guards and a shotgun loaded with blanks, more for noise than harm. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 40s with a weathered face and the permanent expression of someone who spent his life being called too late. He saw the tigress and swore under his breath. "Everyone stay back," he shouted. The tigress turned toward the jeep but did not flee at once. She held her ground until one of the guards fired a blank into the air. The sharp crack shattered the morning. Only then did she spin and lope away down the dirt road toward the forest, limping but fast, vanishing between the tamarind trees beyond the fields. The village erupted into voices. She came for a child. "No, for the goats. It is a bad sign. It is hunger. It is the goddess's warning." Meera stepped out only when Arvind waved that it was safe. He looked grim. "Has anyone fed livestock near the clinic? Left meat waste?" "No." "Any dogs killed? Calves missing?" "Not here," Meera said. "She didn't come for food." Arvind gave her a sharp look. "What do you mean?" She came to the gate and looked inside, Mira said. She wasn't hunting. That is a tiger, doctor, he replied. If it comes into a village, assume danger first. Mira did not argue, but she remembered the way the tigress had stood there, not crouched, not wild-eyed, just fixed on the building with almost unbearable urgency. The next morning she came back. This time it was earlier, just as dawn light touched the fields. A tea seller saw her first and ran shouting through the lane. By the time Mira reached the courtyard, the tigress was already at the gate again. The villagers were not curious now. They were terrified. Doors slammed shut. Mothers dragged children indoors. One man climbed onto his own roof. Arvin's office was called before Pooja had even set the medicine trays out. The tigress looked worse. Mud caked her hind legs. Her shoulder wound was open again. Her right foreleg trembled slightly when she stood still. And now Mira could see something else. The tigress's underside was swollen. Her teats were enlarged and dirty. She was nursing. Mira's stomach tightened. She has cubs, she said aloud. Pooja stared at her. How do you know? Mira pointed. Outside, the tigress paced 3 steps left, 3 steps right, then turned her head sharply toward the forest road. She gave a low, rough sound, not a roar, but a deep coughing call that made the skin on Mira's arms go cold. Then she looked back toward the clinic. Arvind arrived even faster than the day before. He stood beside Mira inside the courtyard, watching through the bars. She is injured, Mira said, and she has cubs. I see that. She is coming here for a reason. Arvind kept his eyes on the tigress. Or she is confused and stressed, which is reason enough to kill someone if we make a mistake. The tigress pressed one side of her body briefly against the gate, then stepped back. A dark smear remained on the rusted iron. Blood. Mira moved closer before Arvind could stop her and looked through the bars. In the dust by the tigress's paws were tiny tracks, not human, not dog, cubs. Her breath caught. They were here, she whispered. Arvind frowned. What? Look. He looked. The little prints were faint, as if one or more small paws had stumbled near the gate and then turned away. One set was clearer than the others. Another dragged oddly, interrupted in the dust. Arvind's expression changed. The tigress gave that same low, rasping call again, then turned, limped several yards down the road, and stopped. She looked back. No one spoke. Then one of the villagers behind the wall shouted, "Shoot it before it comes again!" The tigress flinched, spun, and vanished a second time before Arvind's men could even lift the blank gun. The rest of that day, fear spread through Bhairavpur like fire in dry grass. Parents kept children home. Goatherds refused to take animals out. Men gathered in clusters, arguing loudly about traps, guns, patrols, and omens. Some demanded the forest department capture the tiger immediately. Others said no one should go near the reserve until it moved away. Mira could not stop thinking about the tiny tracks in the dust. That evening, she called Arvind's office herself. "You think I'm imagining things," she said when he answered. "No," he replied. "I think you may be half right." "Only half?" "I think she has cubs. I think one may be injured. I also think following an injured tigress with cubs could get someone killed." Mira stood in her dark kitchen with the lantern on the table, listening to insects outside the window. "Then don't send someone foolish." He gave a dry huff of laughter. "That removes half my staff." She smiled despite herself, then grew serious. "What if she comes again?" "She probably will. And we'll be ready." She came again at dusk the following day. The sky had turned violet over the fields. The clinic was closing. Pooja was stacking records. Mira was about to lock the medicine cabinet when a shout rose from the lane, then another, then the frantic barking of dogs cut short as if the whole village inhaled at once. By the time Mira reached the veranda, the tigress was at the gate for the 3rd time. This time she was not standing. She had collapsed onto her haunches just outside the iron bars, sides heaving, head lowered. Her fur was streaked with mud and dried blood. One flank rose and fell too quickly. She looked toward the clinic with the same fierce attention as before, but now the effort of remaining upright seemed almost beyond her, and beside her in the dust stood a cub. Tiny, maybe 3 months old. Its coat was fuzzier than its mother's, its stripes still soft and blurred. It swayed on unsteady legs and let out a thin, desperate cry that reached Mira like a knife through cloth. One hind leg was held awkwardly off the ground. There was blood on its side. Pooja gasped behind her. The cub tried to step toward the gate and stumbled. The mother tigress nudged it gently with her nose, then lifted her head and looked directly at Mira. In that instant, something inside the doctor settled with absolute certainty. This was not random. This was not a tiger wandering in confusion. This was a mother bringing her injured cub to the only place in the village she knew belonged to healing. Mira did not think, not really. She simply moved. "Call Arvind," she said, "and tell him to bring the wildlife vet. Not later, now." She was already at the courtyard gate before Pooja could protest. "Doctor!" the girl cried. Mira stopped 2 meters from the bars, close enough to see the cub properly. Its breathing was shallow. Its side was punctured with dark, stiff quills, porcupine quills. 3 of them were embedded near the shoulder and belly, one broken off short. Another quill had pierced the mother's foreleg. That explained the limp. That explained the wound. A desperate nighttime encounter in the forest. Perhaps the cub had attacked a porcupine, and the mother had fought to protect it. But there was something worse. Wrapped loosely around the cub's hind leg was a loop of thin nylon cord, cutting through fur and skin. The little animal must have become tangled after the quill injury, making escape even harder. Mira closed her eyes for one heartbeat. When she opened them, the tigress was still looking at her. Not tame, not trusting, not safe, but waiting. "It's all right," Mira whispered, though she knew the words meant nothing. "Help is coming." Arvind arrived with such speed that his jeep skidded sideways in the dirt. With him came Dr. Samir Qureshi, the reserve's wildlife veterinarian, a lean man with careful hands and a dart rifle case in one arm. He took one look at the scene and muttered, "Unbelievable." "The cub is tangled and full of quills," Mira said immediately. "I see." Samir studied the mother tiger through the gate. "She brought it here." "Yes." He glanced at Arvind. "If I wrote this in a report, no one would believe me." The rescue had to be precise. The mother could not be approached while conscious. Even half dead from pain, she could kill a man in one strike if she believed her cub threatened. Samir prepared a sedative dart while Arvind's guards cleared the road and pushed villagers back into houses. Mira stayed in the courtyard, pulse hammering, eyes never leaving the cub. The tigress sensed the tension change. She rose shakily over the cub, head low, a warning rumble building in her chest. Samir fired. The dart struck high in the shoulder. The tigress wheeled with astonishing force, roaring now, a deep explosive sound that sent villagers crying out from behind closed doors. The cub collapsed in fright. Mira stepped back instinctively. The tigress staggered, snapped at the dart, then dragged herself in a half circle around the cub as if still trying to shield it. "It will take a few minutes," Samir said quietly. "No one move." Those minutes felt endless. The tigress fought the sedative with everything in her. She swayed, she blinked heavily. She tried to keep her head up. She touched the cub twice with her nose, then finally painfully sank to the earth beside it. Only when Samir was certain the sedation was deep enough did he open the gate. The cub tried to crawl toward its mother, crying weakly. Mira saw then how thin it was beneath the fuzz of its coat. Samir knelt at once, cutting the nylon cord from the hind leg while Mira, without being asked, unrolled bandages and antiseptic from the emergency kit. "You're a human doctor," Samir said without looking up. "And you need hands," she replied. He almost smiled. "Fair." Together they worked on the cub first. Samir removed the quills one by one while Mira held the tiny striped body still beneath a towel. The cub's breath came fast but remained steady. The punctures were cleaned and flushed. The leg, once free of the cord, was swollen but not broken. A fever had already started. Infection would have killed the cub if another day had passed. Then they turned to the mother. Up close, she was even more heartbreaking. Her foreleg was infected from a deep quill wound. Her side bore claw marks and abrasions. She was underweight, dehydrated, and exhausted almost to collapse. One more night dragging the cub through the forest, and she might not have survived herself. "She carried him part of the way," Samir said softly while checking her gums. "Then he must have walked. Then she brought him here." Mira looked at the great striped head resting in the dust beside the clinic wall and felt a tightness rise in her throat. "She knew," Pooja whispered from the gate. No one corrected her. Mother and cub were transported that night to the reserve's rehabilitation enclosure. The village did not sleep much. Some people were still afraid. Some called it a miracle. Some called it a sign from the forest. By morning, everyone knew the story. The injured tiger had come to the doctor. What followed changed Pyravpur in ways no one expected. The tigress was named Tara in the reserve records, mostly because the staff needed something gentler than Case 47 female. The cub became Veer. Under treatment, Tara's infection responded well. Veer, despite his fever and wounds, proved stubbornly alive. For days, he refused formula unless Tara was near enough to see him through the barrier. When they were finally reunited in a protected pen, Tara began grooming him at once, careful around the wound sites, rumbling softly until the cub stopped crying. Mira visited twice in the first week and then stopped, not because she didn't care, but because Samir reminded her that wild tigers must remain wild. "You were part of the rescue," he said, "not part of their lives." He was right. Still, Arvind sent updates. Tara began walking normally after 10 days. Veer's fever broke, the hind leg healed, the porcupine wounds closed. 3 weeks later, camera trap footage showed Veer pouncing badly on his mother's tail and being corrected with a single patient cuff. The video made even the sternest guard at the clinic laugh. What affected Mira even more than the rescue itself was what happened in the village afterward. Men who had first demanded the tiger be shot now listened quietly when Arvind held a meeting about waste disposal, nighttime livestock security, and keeping illegal nylon traps and cords out of the buffer forest. Women who had once told children that every tiger near a village meant doom now told them a different story, that desperation drives even the strongest creatures to impossible places. Schoolchildren brought drawings of striped tigers to the clinic and left marigold garlands by the gate, much to Mira's embarrassment. One evening, an old farmer who had spent years cursing predators in general shuffled into the clinic for his blood pressure tablets and paused at the gate. "This is where she sat?" he asked. "Yes," Mira said. He stared at the rusted bars, then nodded slowly. "A mother is a mother." It was the simplest truth in the whole affair. Months later, when the hot season had come and the mahua flowers were falling in the forest, Tara and Veer were judged ready for release. Samir invited Mira to attend from a safe distance because, as he put it, "You should see how the story ends." They drove at dawn into a quieter section of the reserve far from fields and villages, where water still remained in a rocky stream bed and chital tracks crisscrossed the dust. Tara and Veer were released together. The crate doors opened. Tara stepped out first, strong again, her coat blazing in the early light. Veer bounded after her, larger now, still a little clumsy, but unmistakably healthy. For one brief second, Tara paused. She turned her head slightly toward the people standing by the vehicles. Mira did not imagine gratitude. She was too sensible for that and too respectful of the animal. Tigers do not owe humans gratitude. Wild things are not stories made for our comfort. But she remembered the evening at the clinic gate, the blood, the tiny cries, the impossible stare of a mother who had reached the edge of everything she knew and chosen, somehow, to step one pace farther. Then Tara turned away and walked into the forest. Veer followed close behind. The sal trees swallowed their stripes almost at once. On the way back, Arvin drove in silence for several miles before saying, "You know, if anyone else had told me this story, I would have said they were a liar." Mira smiled faintly. "I still think that sometimes." He glanced at her. "What made you see it?" "The cub," she said first. Then she shook her head. "No, before that. The way she kept looking at the clinic instead of the goats, instead of the people. The way she came back to the same gate. The way pain can look when it belongs to someone who still has another life depending on them." Arvin nodded once. After that, whenever new patients came to Bhairavpur and noticed the faint claw mark still visible at the bottom of the clinic gate, someone in the waiting area would inevitably tell them the story. About the injured tiger who kept returning to the same village gate. About the doctor who finally saw why. Most people told it badly, adding things that never happened. A tiger bowing its head, a miraculous touch, tears in golden eyes, some sign too neat to be true. Mira never bothered correcting all of it. Stories grow in villages the way vines grow over old walls, but when Pooja told it, she always kept the important part. She didn't come because she trusted people, the young woman would say. She came because she had no other choice, and still she chose the place where healing lived. That was the real heart of it, not magic, not tameness, need, pain, motherhood, and one impossible decision made in the narrow space between fear and hope. Years later, Mira would still sometimes stand at the clinic gate in the quiet minutes before sunrise, listening to birds wake in the neem trees and watching the road that led toward the forest. She never saw Tara again. That was as it should be. But once, during the first rains of June, she noticed fresh paw prints in the wet mud just beyond the gate. One large, one smaller. They faced the clinic for a moment, then turned back toward the trees.